Greetings. Back with another one. All right, I'm here on Game Rant, and as all of you, my fellow geeks know that they are making another Avengers, Doomsday. As of course, not too long ago, Robert Downey Jr. was announced to be Doctor Doom, which is kind of weird, because when it comes to the Marvel universe, you don't, at least I don't want to see Robert Downey Jr. be anybody else but Tony Stark, Iron Man. And like I said, I like Doctor Doom as a kid. I've always liked him. I was always thought he was a very very cool character, very cool villain and stuff like that. But I have like mixed opinions, mixed emotions about it. But yeah, I just want to go through this article on Game Rant talking about, because here's the thing. When it comes to the Marvel universe, the X-Men was always my favorite, you know, demographic of Marvel. I've always loved X-Men. I'm a huge Magneto fan. Colossus, Cyclops, characters like that. Storm was always pretty cool to me. And it basically says, let me just stop rambling and I'll, add on as I always do towards the end. But it says, the title says, there are so many versions of the Fox X-Men. So which ones will be in Avengers Doomsday? Let's just go down and read, shall we? After several decades of teasing incremental additions, it's finally happening. The X-Men are coming into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. However, if the recent Avengers Doomsday casting and announcements from Marvel Studios are to be taken at face value, it isn't as many might have expected. Instead of a new team of characters and actors, the MCU first X-Men team will include many returning members from the 20th Century Fox X-Men of the early 2000s, which begs the question: what versions of X-Men is this? Now, I was actually talking with somebody this earlier today. I don't, and I heard that yeah, cause like I said, all right, let me just read this. It said the cast members from the original Fox X-Men trilogy, such as Patrick Stewart, Ian McKellen, Alan Cumming, Rebecca Romaine, James Marsden, have all been announced as returning for the upcoming Avengers Doomsday. Now, I, I don't know. Like I said, some of these actors are kind of, that's what I'm saying. So this is going to be an older cast. It will. I mean, like I said, Patrick Stewart, Ian McKellen, they're fine actors. They did good jobs playing Charles and Eric. But like I said, those guys are up there in age now. I mean, obviously, Xavier, is in a wheelchair, so all he had, I mean, he has telepathic powers and stuff like that, so he doesn't have to do much. But I want to see, like I said, I love Magneto. He's my favorite X-Men. So I was me personally, I would choose James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender as Charles and Eric, because they're younger, right? But I guess that's what this article is talking about. Like, I mean, there's so many different versions. What versions of the X-Men are they going to use? And it seems with this, they're going older. I hope that they really don't. No disrespect to Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen, but I want them to go younger. But I guess it really doesn't matter who plays Doom. I guess in terms of the age bracket, I don't know, but it just seems that they're going over. They're just bringing all the people back. Alan Cumming was a Nightcrawler, of course, and Rebecca Romaine, she played Mystique. She was Mystique. James Marsden was a Cyclops. Those three I guess are fine, but it's just like I said, Alan Cumming. I mean, Alan Cumming is not as old as Ian McKellen, Patrick Stewart, but he's I think in his 50s. I think he's pushing in his 60s and stuff like that. So this is going to be an older cast, and I'm not sure about it. I'm not sure about it, but it says, however, a continuity of those X-Men films is anything but pristine. Eventually, they became so convoluted and difficult to keep track of that even the most ardent of fans admitted defeat, leaving modern audiences wondering how those characters will be incorporated in the Marvel Comics universe. The massive confusion of the Fox X-Men timeline As an example, these films confusion considered the big screen role of Cyclops originated by James Marsden. Like I say, Cyclops, he was just done so dirty in the X-Men that trilogy. He was done so dirty. Like I said, I've always liked Cyclops, and I just think that he kind of like got brushed aside, and I just don't think he was utilized to the maximum degree of his ability. I hope that if Cyclops does make an appearance, that they they doing better than what they did. I mean, no, don't get me wrong. I enjoyed the X Men films for what they were. I can always go back and watch them and stuff like that. I mean, there's just like I said, it's just fun, dumb films. But I just hope that they, like I said, how this is. However, Cyclops was killed off screen after what amounted to a cameo appearance in X Men: The Last Stand. Like I said, it's I think Jean or Phoenix just blew him up. It appears, for those who remember that. The character next appeared in X Men Origins Wolverine, not played by Mars. Was it Wolverine not played by Marsden? While audiences saw his origin story. Cyclops then popped up again, once more played by Marsden in a brief epilogue of X-Men Days of the Future's Past several years later. But then the sequel to that film, X-Men Apocalypse, will feature a younger version of Cyclops, again, not played by Marsden or the other prior young Cyclops actor, getting another different origin story. If that sounds confusing, it's because it is. However, it's critical to note that there are some in narrative justifications for parts of the timeline's messiness. While all the X-Men films prior to the Days of Future Past are meant to be on a cohesive story, the culminating installment feature its fair share of time travel. Time travel and timeline altering antics. As a result, it teed up the franchise to take things in new, uncharted directions. However, X-Men Apocalypse squandered this opportunity and just reset the board. The result was that things were mostly the same. Hugh Jackman's Logan, for example, is still experimented upon and turned into Weapon X. Yet there were just enough baffling changes. Somehow Angel was now born several decades earlier to make things even more confounding. Now, there are some, like I said, after Last Stand, there were some X-Men features that I missed. But I remember they did, what is it, Days of Futures Past. They had the First Class and stuff like that. First Class is easy. They went back in time to do that. But Days of Futures Past, I don't even know if I remember who was in that film. But I remember the Apocalypse one. I can't remember, Phoenix and Mystique and some few other people. But they're right. The X-Men timeline is kind of all over the place, at least as far as the film's concerned. But I think they should just go at the kind of like further to the past, but I mean not too deep and not to the point where everybody is just so old. So because obviously Logan apparently died in his film. That's what I'm saying. In Last Stand, like a lot of people die. Jean died apparently. Charles died apparently, unless he astral projected and stuff like that. And Scott died and stuff like that. It's just crazy. On top of all of this, no one seems certain whether later editions films such as Deadpool, Logan, or even Dark Phoenix were supposed to all be set within alternate timelines from one another or the same one. Logan featured in the storyline in which all the X-Men except for Logan and Charles X were dead. See, that's what I'm saying. Everybody died. However, director James Mangold said that wasn't necessarily reflective of where the main series would go. Deadpool 2 featured a gag in which Ryan Reynolds bemoans not being able to pay for any of the actual X-Men to be in the movie while he unknowingly stands in front of a room full of X-Men Apocalypse cast, all of whom are the younger 80s set versions of those characters, despite the fact that Deadpool 2 is set in present day. And it says Marvel's desire to milk nostalgia. To say that the Fox X-Men timeline got muddled would be an understatement. But those original incarnations of these on-screen characters and their respective actors remain beloved to this day. Marvel Studios has had penchant for cashing in on nostalgia in recent years, from the appearance of Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield in the Spider-Man No Way Home, which I didn't see that one. I heard it was good, but I didn't see it. Like, so I kind of tapped out of comic book films after Endgame. I was pretty much done after that. I mean, like I said, I love Batman a lot, and I watched all the Batman films, and I watched the end of the film. But after Endgame, I was pretty much done. I can't recall the next comic book film that I seen after that. But it says to Chris Evans, Human Torch, and Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, Deadpool, and Wolverine. It makes perfect sense that Avengers Doomsday is opting to bring back these OG cast members. Honestly, I don't want Wolverine in there. I don't want Wolverine in this. I know Wolverine was an Avenger at some point, but bringing some people who, we never seen in any of these films. You got like Havoc, you got Sunspot, you got X-23. I think she was in X-23. You got, Cable was in one of the films too. But like I say, get some of the. I don't know. They might as well just throw everybody in there. I mean, I think I have a list of some of the X-Men who were Avengers. Yeah, you got Scarlet, you got Quicksilver, you got Beast, Namor. I didn't even know Namor was an X-Men, but you got Wolverine, Storm, Havoc, Rogue, Sunfire, Sunspot, Cannonball, Cable, Dazzler. That'd be a good one to throw Dazzler in there. X-23. But yeah, I mean, yeah, give us some characters who we've never really seen in any of these films before. That'd be pretty cool. But I don't know. I just think that a lot of people are kind of like tapped out. But like, let me just finish reading. Additionally, things got sour at the end of the franchise. Dark Phoenix was an unprecedented critical and financial disaster. In the end, did I see Dark Phoenix? I think I did see Dark Phoenix. I can't remember much of it, but I think I did see it. With that in mind, it also makes sense that the Marvel comic universe would sidestep those younger, more recent casting in favor of choices that are more tinted by the rose-colored glasses of nostalgia. See, I don't mind them going younger. I really don't, because to me, it's not really about the act. Like, I think they just want to go back to a time where the films were kind of successful, like box office hits, I guess, or they made even, and they just want to use those familiar faces who appeared in those films that did well, as opposed to like these current films where they're not really doing very well. So they think if they use those younger actors, it won't do well. Like I said, I can't speak for anybody else. Me personally, I would prefer they go younger. I really would prefer they go younger, because like I said, the younger actors, they can just do more. I mean, yeah, of course, with films, heavy comic films, I mean, it's going to be heavy CGI and a lot of things, but in terms of combat and stuff, I wouldn't mind them going younger. But like I said, when they say cashing on nostalgia, they just want to use those actors that people beloved, like Patrick Stewart, Ian McKellen, and James Marsden, and Rebecca Romijn, and people like that who were in the earlier films. But which actual iteration of the X-Men will be showing up in Avengers Doomsday? The smart money would be on Marvel looking to cherry pick from the most favorable received era of the films. Yes, like I just said, like they did with the returning characters in No Way Home to this end. It would make the most creative sense to pull from the team as seen in X2, X-Men United. The film was the most well received of the bunch and is still talked about as one of the great superhero sequels of all time. I got X2, X-Men 2. Yeah, I gotta go back and watch that. Plus, it includes all of the OG cast members who are returning from Doomsday by X-Men: The Last Stand, Alan Cummings as Nightcrawler, Rebecca Romijn as Mystique, James Marsden as Cyclops, have been removed from the story through death or depowerment. The Russo brothers will likely avoid this period of the timeline together. Streaming the old for fan service. Deadpool and Wolverine pulled in, which I did not see. I did not see Deadpool and Wolverine. Deadpool and Wolverine pulled a version of Hugh Jackman's Logan from a separate timeline and kept them vague enough to serve as a stand-in from the established movie version, while also being more comfortably comic accurate. Marvel will likely do the same with the returning characters in Avengers Doomsday. Given how much has changed in the superhero movie space since the early 2000s, Marvel will likely want the freedom to, augment some of the character designs. They can embrace more pulpy, a comic book aesthetic for the characters, while at the same time capitalizing on the nostalgia these versions of the characters hold. The ultimate key to what audiences should expect from this version of the X-Men is most blatantly on display in a different multiversal Marvel comic universe film, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. During the film's Illuminati centric set piece, Patrick Stewart made his initial MCU debut, returning as Charles Xavier. While he was recognizable, he was also in more comic book accurate science fiction, in depth wheelchair that the films had never featured before, and was welcomed on screen by the playing of the title theme from X-Men, the animated series. Through these means, Marvel was able to cherry pick fan favorite elements from across the character's history while still retaining the recognizable element of Patrick Stewart. Expect the same thing from the roster of X-Men characters set to show up in Avengers Doomsday. Considering how fractured and disparate the Fox X-Men timeline already was, it's safe to say that Marvel probably isn't too concerned about adhering to those films. Instead, it will likely simply use the returning cast as a launch pad to deliver nostalgic moments of fan service. But here's the thing, though. I mean, the last Avengers technically was a trilogy. It was 3 films. They had the first one. They had Ultron. Was it 3 or 4? They had the first one. They had Ultron. They had Infinity Wars and Endgame. So it was 4 films. Are they gonna do 4 films with Patrick Stewart, and Ian McKellen, and like the older people? Will they do that, or is this just going to be a one and done? I don't know. But like I said, when it comes to the X-Men, they have plenty to choose from. But I'm sorry, like this guy, I don't want him in there. I don't want, because like I said, Wolverine has been done to death. Hugh Jackman has been done to death. I'm sure he'll be happy to do it if they call him. I'm sure he'll be happy to do it. But like I said, I don't know. I would love to see a film that has Cyclops in it with Wolverine not in it, because Wolverine is just going to outshine Cyclops. We all know that. And I don't know. I mean, Wolverine's just gonna save the day, and he's just gonna just take out everybody. So, I don't know. I'm biased. Like I'm just tired of Wolverine. I'm tired of him. So nothing against Wolverine as a character. I like him as a character. I'm actually playing Marvel Rivals right now. I'm trying to get better with him in that. He's a pretty cool character in there. But I'm just tired of seeing Wolverine in these movies, man. It's just, I don't know. I'm kind of just Wolverine fatigued, and I would like to see other people. But like I said, they got a lot of people to choose from. Like, Sabretooth was a Avenger at one point, and all those people that I named earlier. But yeah, man, I don't know. Like I said, the casting choice, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, will they do like 3 to 4 films like the last trilogy did, or will this just be a one and done? I don't know. And then I mean, no Spider-Man, no Hulk. I mean, Hulk was kind of done dirty towards the end of the trilogy too. I mean, Hulk was like, he was the best in the first one. Like, out of all of the Avenger films, I like Ultron the best. I know a lot of people probably didn't like Ultron, but I mean, I like all of them obviously, but Ultron was probably my favorite for some. I just liked it. I mean, like I said, Romanoff, she's dead, and Clint, we don't know what he's doing. And Cap, yeah, it's just high. Cap is he's older now because he went back, snapped it back, and then he went back to live his life, and now he's old now, in the way that the current timeline is going. Falcon, he's Captain America now. Will Bucky make an appearance? I don't know, but but this is, I like this article they're talking about, but just because the X-Men timelines they're all over the place, and we just don't know which timeline. But like I said, if they're bringing back Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart and Rebecca Romijn and Alan Cummings, and then this is going to be a pretty old cast. It's going to be a pretty older cast, and I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence about it. I mean, like I said, it'll be cool to see Ian McKellen as Magneto again, but I like I said earlier, I very much prefer James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender. I just prefer to see Charles and Eric younger. I just prefer to see that, and like, of course, Robert Downey Jr. He's not a. I mean, he's not old. He's not old, but he's not a young guy either. So yeah, it just seems like they just want to, like they said, milking nostalgia. So they just want to go back and get the older actors and stuff like that. And I just now, if this will be a one and done, then I guess the older cast will be fine, I guess. But if you're trying to do like a trilogy, like a 3 to 4 film stretch, I would recommend that they go younger. But we'll just have to wait and see. And I think this won't be coming out until next year. So we're still early in 2025. I think it'll come out in 2026. I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. But all right, y'all, man. 31 cents added. Another one for the archives. It's your brother Bleak signing out. Until next time, you guys. Us.